Maria, these meetings take place at a very crucial time for the European economy. What can be achieved really today?
Well, yes, for the European economy, but also the global economy, because we still see the ramifications from the situation in the Middle East and, of course, the Strait of Hormuz, which is far from operating normally. Now, for this meeting is day two. This is, just to set the scene for our viewers, an elite gathering of G7 ministers, G7 central bankers. The head of the European Central Bank, Christine Lagarde, will also be there, and the boss of the Eurogroup. On the agenda, there's a number of issues which go from trade to sanctions to, of course, China. Increasingly, trade tensions between the European Union and the Chinese are palpable. But to start with the sanctions, yesterday, as you mentioned, the United States once again confirming and announcing that they will extend this waiver on Russian oil. That means that Russian oil that is at sea, that is in transit, countries will be able to buy it and not be in breach of U.S. sanctions. So that is significant in terms of what the U.S. is hoping to achieve, which is to ease some of the concerns of the supply, but also to bring down some of the price pressures because of the instability in the Middle East. The flip side is that Russia will financially benefit from this decision, which will be in place for the next 30 days. For the Europeans, this is bad news, and it is a blow to their strategy because it means, yes, once again, sanctions will be eased on Russian energy. The Europeans argue it's the complete opposite. The strategy should be totally radically different. This is the time to increase the pressure on the Russians and not allow them to cash in on global instability. But the U.S. seems to be concerned, as I mentioned, with global supply. They say they're also doing this, quote, for vulnerable nations that are now feeling the heat because of the war. Of course, obviously, the war is led by the U.S., Israel versus Iran. And they also argue that it will stop China from stockpiling the oil that is available. For the Europeans, however, it is a blow to their strategy when it comes to the sanctions. The other issue that will feature heavily is China and the Chinese overcapacity. We've talked about this on the show repeatedly on Euronews. For the Europeans, this is key. They believe that the Chinese, with this massive overload in capacity, a lot of that could be, quote, dump, which is not a very polite term, but the idea is that they will now try to relocate some of their extra production to Europe. That could have an impact on the European industry not being able to compete on the same terms. We spoke on Euronews with the Commissioner for Trade, who said that the EU will not allow this, that they will fight and really fight hard for every industry and every job. And at the same time, you're seeing increasingly more defensive measures from the Europeans. The Financial Times, of course, yesterday reported that the EU could be prepared to intervene the supply chain. And there's also been reports that the EU will seriously now consider plans to diversify suppliers coming into Europe. So a lot of that will feature heavily in this meeting.
Pretty high stakes meeting. And this meeting comes, of course, as Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, is on his way to Beijing. But just tell us as well, speaking of energy, we've seen Italy's Giorgia Meloni upping the ante over deficit rules here in Brussels.
Well, she has. And these two stories, of course, are connected because energy prices, we've seen now more than 3 months of elevated energy prices. The Strait of Hormuz is this crucial point for global oil and is still far from, as I mentioned, operating normally. All of that is having trickle-down effects on the European industry. For a country like Italy, really is the SMEs, it's the small and medium companies that are the backbone to this country. This is having a serious impact, and the Italian Prime Minister is facing an election next year too. So she's now sending a letter, which hopefully we can put up on the screen. Maeve, everyone in Brussels got a copy of this letter yesterday. It was leaked all over the place. So really, the Italians wanted to send a big message with this. What they argue is that this is an emergency. Is just as important as defense. This is critical for Europe, and they call on the Commission to relax their fiscal rules. Remember, for European countries, every year they have to keep their deficit below 3%. What Giorgia Meloni argues is that unless there is an easing on those rules, unless there's an exemption to measures related to energy, well, Italy will go above the 3%, or if they don't want to do that, they will not be able to play into a massive defense program that the EU wants, that the Commission wants, which is the SAFE. So she's really saying, if you want me to play ball on defense, you need to help me out on energy. A lot of that, the Italians feel their concerns have not been addressed properly by Brussels, and all of this is happening in anticipation of a European Leaders Summit. We now see that the Italian leader is saying either we get flexibility on energy or this is going to have an impact on defense. We cannot spend 2% for everything. The problem, however, is Brussels says in order to put forward extraordinary measures, you need to have a severe economic downturn. But the EU is not quite there yet. There is a risk of stagflation, but we've not seen a massive recession manifest.
Okay, Maria Steo, thank you so much for that analysis.